Orange Girl here with another scrapbooking process video for you. I'm working with the February 2018 Hip Kit Club kits, and my assignment this week is mixed media, and I'm going to use this awesome background. It's just white cardstock, and I'm adding some water to it. It's the Marshmallow by Bazzill cardstock, and it's a bit thicker than everything else. I didn't put any gesso down or anything, mainly because I don't really need to, because the thickness of this paper and the style of this paper really holds the water pretty well. So I added some water to the acrylic paint, and that's the Lemon Heavy Body acrylic paint that comes in the color kit. I added water so that I could use it more like a watercolor or a mist. The reason that I added water to the background ahead of time is because when you add water to the background first and then you add paint or spray or whatever over top of that water, it spreads, and it kind of only goes where you've placed that water. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense, but you might be able to see it a little bit better when I add this Dylusions mist. So you do see how it kind of, especially in the bottom right there, it really moved to where the water was, and then it stops just all by itself magically where the water stops. Okay, so I'm kind of going back and forth between adding doing the packaging technique and then also adding the water so that it only goes where I want it to go. And my main purpose for doing that is I don't want a ton of overlap of the colors. That's also why I am going ahead and trying to dry it as much as possible in between with my heat tool. So next, I wasn't quite sure, and I wanted to really make sure that it was dry before I add this last color. I'm using a Colorings Shimmers product. It's called Well Blue Me Down, and that's just from my stash. And this one will really mix with the other two and cause it to create new colors. And I want a little of it, but not a lot of it. So I put the water down first, and now just as you can see, I'm just splattering where that water is, and it mostly just follows the water line. It's kind of almost magical. See how I'm just touching it, touching the nozzle to the water, and then it just spreads. And I'm going to add some splatters, of course, and I'll do that with all of the rest of the paint as well. So that's kind of how I'm doing this. It's a modified packaging technique, I suppose, a little bit. So now I have everything is pretty dry, and I have my photo, and I'm hoping that everything is dry enough. I'm going to go ahead and add Versamark, which is a stamp pad that you use to do embossing, heat embossing, and I'm adding that to the stencil that came in the kit. And then I'm going to add some white embossing powder over the top. We got this in, I think it was like the November or December kit. I'm crossing my fingers because I wanted to make sure, I'm like hoping that it was dry enough that the embossing powder isn't going to stick to the paint, and it's only going to stick to the Versamark. And it worked. And there's a few little places that I brush off some of the embossing powder so that it doesn't stick in that area, and then I go ahead and use my heat gun to set that and firm it up and make it look really cool. And it really does look cool. The white on the color looks kind of cool. I love watching it as it turns from the powder to gets melted and turns into the white look. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so I'm going to do both little sections with the same technique. You'll see me do that here again. So my idea at this point was that I was going to put my photo on the left in the little bit bigger area, and then down in the right I was going to do a little cluster of embellishments or journaling, or maybe even my title. I hadn't completely decided. No idea what my title was going to be. In fact, at this point, I wasn't super firm on my picture. I went back and forth between adding this picture and then using a black and white picture. I really like using black and white photos when I have a layout with lots and lots of color because it just pops. and I like that. So I kind of go back and forth between that, but I do end up using this photo that you see there to my right. So now I'm just going to add a few more splatters for good measure, and I'll add a few more later too of the same colors, just now that that embossing powder is all ready to go and it's all embossed. Now, if you didn't know that, when you do emboss, it does act as a resist. So if I'd have done the paint second, paint would not have gone where the places were embossed, if that makes sense. The embossing, once it's set, it acts as a resist to the water or paint. And I could have done it that way. I just wasn't exactly sure where I wanted all of the white. And so I thought, well, I better do the paint first, and then I can add the right white where it goes. So as I finished with this, I decided that I needed a little bit more of this green and a little bit more of the yellow. So I got my paints back out and my water, and I just did a little bit more of the adding the water, then adding the paint, and then using the packaging to help mush it around a little bit. So you'll see me do that here in a minute, and I'll get out my heat gun one more time just to kind of speed up the process a little. Part of it is I am pretty, I don't know, particular about where I want things to go, and so that's why I'm doing it this way. But part of it is just because it's just a different technique, and so I go ahead and put the water down, and then I smushed it to make it look a little bit more natural, and then add some more paint. Because when I smushed it, it made it not quite as dark, and I wanted it dark. So. All right, so I'm about done here, and then I'm gonna move on to starting to add my photo and some layers behind my photo. So I went through and I grabbed, I think, 3 different pattern papers, and I don't end up using that one right there, but I end up grabbing 3 different pattern papers and putting them behind my photo. I grabbed something that had that bluish aqua color kind of, and then pink, and then the darker color. There it is right there. So I just ripped those, and I ended up cutting some of them off because I had a little bit too much there. And then I'm also going to add some tissue paper behind my photo, which just softens it up a little bit too. All of that stuff in the background. I don't want the pattern. I want there to be layers, but I don't want the pattern paper to stand out, if that makes sense. I want the painting and the photo. Okay, so there's a picture of my mom. And I was kind of trying to decide if I wanted to do that photo on this, and that I will save for another time. I have a layout idea from the high school picture from when she was in school. So next, I'm ready to embellish. So I'm just going through and I'm grabbing everything that seems like it might be perfect or close to perfect, maybe not even perfect. Anything with text that I think matches, anything with colors that I think match. I was toying with the idea of going with flowers, or do I want the leaves, like the embossed pieces, or do I want butterflies? I kind of went back and forth, and I ended up going and grabbing all of my stickers and just kind of going crazy. So right now I'm just kind of looking through everything, and I'm just kind of reminding myself, what is it that I have, and what might I want to use for this layout? And I don't really even know what my title's going to be at this point. And I kind of had the idea. I really liked a couple of items that were on these rub-ons, and they matched color-wise, but they also matched like the sentiment. One of the things that I was thinking about when I took this photo of my daughter was how unbelievably grown up she looked. Okay, so I used some sentiments that worked with that. So what I'm doing here is I flipped my paper while I was adding a little bit of a black border on either side. And when I flipped it, I was like, oh, I kind of like that better. I like the photo at the bottom with a sentiment up the top. So I end up going with this design instead of my original idea. So the rub-on, there's a rub-on over there on the left, and it says "You Go Girl" or something like that. and I don't think I end up using that one. This is a lemon that I don't think I'll use, and so I am going to use it as a check to see if the rub-on's going to work on this stuff that I have in the background. I didn't know if it would work with the paint and the embossing, so I just put it so it was going to be underneath my photo, and it worked. So then I could use the other pieces that I really liked from it. So now I'm looking for text. I couldn't decide if I wanted to actually write up some journaling for this one or if I wanted to add some of the text strips that are already made. And so I'm just continuing to look through at this point all of the different, I mean, there's so many things that are included in this kit, and I'm just trying to find the things that fit the sentiment. So, so back to the photo, we were in Rockford, Illinois visiting some friends, and we had kind of a bit of a delay before we were going to meet them for lunch or whatever it was, and so we stopped at a park, and we just found a park on the side of the road, basically, and she was playing, and I snapped this photo of her about to go down the slide, and she just looked up at me when I took it, and she's not smiling even, but it kind of doesn't matter. She looks serious, and she looks so unbelievably beautiful, and she looks so grown up. And so my thoughts for this layout were to use some of the sentiments that talk about maybe growing up or staying young, staying little, or telling her what I want her to do or be. And so I end up calling this Laugh and Dream. And so I'm using these foam puffy stickers, I guess they are, alphas, to write Dream. And I almost titled it just Dreamer, but I ended up just going with Dream. And then in a little bit here, I'm going to find a die cut that looks like a cloud, and I'm going to put that underneath the Dream. I'm going to use an ampersand from, there's the cloud. I'm going to use an ampersand from the wood veneers that come, and I'm going to add the word laugh, which I can't remember where that one came from. It might have been from chipboard, I feel like. I'm not sure. You'll see it when it comes up. So I'm still thinking about, do I want to add some flowers or some butterflies or whatever. But I end up really not doing any of that. I add a little bit of the leaves that you already see there. And that's about it. So that says Stay Golden. And I kind of messed it up when I put it on there, but that's okay. It turned out okay. And then I do end up, in a few minutes here, I'm going to go off camera and type up my journaling. I decided that I wanted to go ahead and add journaling to it. So I add a little bit of journaling up at the top, and then I add a little bit of journaling at the bottom. So there's the Laugh and Dream. And then I add some of the wooden buttons to kind of put a little bit of, I don't know, embellishment that is not flat. Because a lot of the embellishments that I've used so far are pretty flat. So right here, I'm still determining, am I gonna do my journaling, or am I gonna add some phrases? There just weren't enough phrases that fit it, the whole idea of it. So oh, I thought about putting some of these hearts on there, and then I thought it was just a little bit too much, so I took those off. So my journaling ends up just saying, up at the top, I think it says, we stopped for a few minutes at a park in Rockford. And then at the bottom, it says, you looked extra beautiful and so grown up. And that's really what this layout is about. And boy, have we taken lots of pictures since then where she looks even more grown up. And I am so happy that I get to watch her grow up. But I am also sad because she's my baby. But there you go. So I did pop up the photograph, and I popped up the Dream a Little Dream that's up there in the on that text piece that I'm just touching. I popped those two pieces up just for a little bit of dimension. I used my usual craft foam, cheap craft foam that I got at Michael's, and now I'm adding in my journaling. and that is a wood veneer. I think I used 2 or 3 of those, and I'm adding a little bit of tangled thread in various locations behind my photo, I think a couple times, and then behind that wood button up in the corner. So basically my embellishments are a couple little sprigs of leaves and then some thread and a few little pieces of wood veneer and a few little pieces of um, what the wood buttons, yeah, and that's about it. So I'm really close to seeing the close-ups here. I do go back in here and I add some splatters of all 3 colors of paint, and then I'm pretty much done. And so you're going to see in the close-ups, I hope here coming up, that you'll be able to see what that paint looks like with the embossing powder over the top. So I had to move things out of the way so I could add a little bit of a little bit more yellow. I really like how this turned out. I really like the vibrant paint, how it looked. That the Dylusions inks are just super bright, and that mixed with the acrylic just looks nice. And then shimmers is always good. It's my favorite, and it adds a lot of shimmer to it. So there you go. Thanks a lot for stopping by, and I will see you next time.